Hello everybody, it's wonderful to see you all here, and we're going to be talking today about accessibility for gamers with disabilities. Just to get a bit of a feel for the audience, because I like to do that, have I got any game developers here? Nice. And don't feel free not to put your hand up, but do I have many gamers with accessibility issues? I wear glasses. It's easy, you twisted your wrist or something. So my name's Giselle Rosman. I work at Hipster Whale. I do lots of things, and I also run IGDA in Melbourne, which is the International Game Developers Association. And I'm executive producer at Global Game Jam. And now I'm seeing people in the audience and wanting to wave. And I guess particularly I'm wearing my Global Game Jam hat today, even if I'm wearing my chicken on my shirt. Because we do look at that, and I'll sort of go into that a bit later. So at the moment I will just go down the row and introduce our fine panel, or rather get them to introduce themselves and tell me who you are and why accessibility is important to you. Mr. Hamilton.
Hey, so I'm Ian and I'm an accessibility specialist, so I work with studios, publishers and industry bodies to try and raise the bar for accessibility across the industry. And why accessibility is important to me? Well, I kind of got into it for a combination of two reasons. The first thing was actually seeing some playtesting footage of games that have been adapted to preschool kids with profound motor impairments, and seeing the huge difference it was actually making to people's lives. And then the second reason that pushed me into it further was just out of sheer frustration of working with so many different game developers and seeing them putting so much time into polishing one small little area to try and make it a little bit more fun for a few people, at the same time as wiping out huge demographics just off the back of some design decision like using red and green for checkpoints.
I'm Luke. I'm a game developer from Melbourne, and I've got a few people in my life who have heavily impairments, and just sort of, watching, I became aware in the physical world of just how things like a single step can make a massive difference in the quality of life of someone with accessibility issues. And then in my career as a web developer, a big part of it was designing web pages and web services to degrade gracefully depending on people's technology, which is a big overlap with accessibility. And then that just carried over into game development, and just sort of that recognition that the smallest things, they're so easy to do, but they make a massive difference. It's really one of my favourite things about software, really.
Yeah. I'm Ben Rolfe. I'm a South East Queensland-based serious game developer. So games that do something beyond entertainment. And in that field, it's really important that you kind of reach the broadest audience possible within to deliver the message that you're going to deliver. I was also until recently the program coordinator for the Serious Games course up there. So I kind of come at it from that angle, and also from the angle of just being a gamer, being a game developer, loving games and loving the creation and sharing of experiences, and wanting as many people as possible to have those interesting and weird and wonderful experiences that are games. And can I just say, if anyone is having trouble hearing any of the speakers at any time, can you just point upwards or something and give us a bit of a sign so we know, and we can just lean in a little closer?
Hi, I'm Liam Routt. I'm the manager of the games programs at Film Victoria. We're very passionate about supporting the games industry, and part of that is making sure to help them to level up their focus. As a government agency, we're very interested in making sure that all forms of representation and inclusion are part of the priorities that game developers have. So I'm very much here to support the industry and to hear what people have to say and make sure that our programs reflect everyone's concerns.
And for those of you who are game developers in the audience, he's a very approachable man. Come up and tap him on the shoulder.
I second that. And now I've forgotten what I was about to say. So accessibility obviously is a very broad term in a lot of ways, and it can include things like a representation within games to feel included that way. We are focusing on specifically looking at accessibility for gamers with disabilities in this panel, but I do hope that there is a panel somewhere that's about how to animate women. Just had to get that in there. So yeah, just so you know, like I'm super passionate about all of those things, but for the purposes of today, we'll be looking specifically at making games more available to more people, because overall, as game developers, we like to be able to get our games to as many people as we can, and if it's something as simple as using a colourblind filter to check that your game is still readable to colourblind people, then I think it's a really good thing to be knowing about. It's an area that is getting a lot more attention, I think. Maybe it's my focus as well, but it's certainly come along a fair way recently. What kind of recent progress have you panels seen in areas of accessibility? Are there any new great things that have made you jump up and down with joy? Looking at Ian first. That'll happen.
All right, I'll start. Yeah, I think the nice thing certainly over the past year has just been the breadth of advancements that there's been. And then every year, the pace of change of the accessibility industry gets faster and faster. And there hasn't really been any exception last year. So you had probably the biggest thing from the year previously was the addition of accessibility functionality directly into the games consoles. And that's continued to progress, extra features being added, and also commitment at a really high level. So I think it's around GDC kind of time, like around Easter kind of time. Microsoft's announced their Gaming for Everyone program, and you've got people like Phil Spencer and stuff making really big public commitments to accessibility, which is really big, and that's been a big barrier in accessibility for so many years. There's lack of support from the top, so that's really exciting to see that spreading through the companies. But all kinds of stuff, like from obviously accessibility in games themselves, really, really nice stuff in games like big name AAA games like the NFL 17, loads of really nice stuff for people with impaired vision in that. Also in Uncharted 4, really, really nice stuff for people with motor impairment and that. And that's been something that's seen big ripples go out through other developers as well. Seeing that a game that's so big and popular and successful as Uncharted does a really good job at dispelling those myths about, accessibility is going to be something that's going to dilute my game and make it less fun, or like 93 Metacritic and 4.5 million sales kind of says differently, Other things kind of sitting around that process as well of game development, so things like EA setting up a Twitter account specifically for accessibility feedback across their titles, which is EA_accessible. So if anyone ever has any accessibility feedback, send it to that Twitter account and it will get shared throughout all the relevant studios. Critically as well, so like a website called Game Critics, which is a game review site. In February, I think they've now committed to including accessibility information in every single review they put out. So it's just really, really nice seeing kind of like this broad spread of advances, that there's more and more people and more different areas of the industry getting involved and getting interested.
Yeah, and I guess while we're talking about who is doing things in accessibility and bringing it forward, Liam, what be your government doing to support such things, which is also our government if you're from Victoria?
Film Victoria has had a bit of a focus on accessibility over the last few years. We engaged Ian and some other experts in the field to advise us. Our programs all have a fair amount of upfront sort of clarity around you should be thinking about accessibility, you should be thinking about your audience and the various things that they can do. So we're trying to get developers to think as early as possible in their development cycle about what they can do easily at the beginning rather than more difficultly at the end of their
And if you have, because there are accessibility requirements tied to Film Victoria funding, which I think is wonderful. But if I'm a game developer and I'm totally clueless about such things, how do you help me learn?
The guidelines actually have references to, again, Ian has put together quite a few helpful tips and directions for developers, which we put together with the IGDA, I believe.
Yeah, some people from the IGDA's accessibility group, a few other people from BBC and various other people in the industry. But yeah, so I'd like to plug it if anyone wants to go and find that resource. It's just gameaccessibilityguidelines.com. There's lots of good tips on there.
It's got a great sort of, it's got the easy entry stuff, and then it's got, you know, how can you be even better, and I really like that sort of step model that you've got in there.
You should add achievements to it, so as you, as a developer, you tick more and more
Gamify
off.
everything.
Gamify.
Hell yeah.
It's sensational, and it works for any software actually. So if you do web development or games, absolutely go see the guidelines. They're great.
Yeah.
And we try to have a conversation with the developers who come in around what accessibility they are achieving and what accessibility they find is too difficult. Getting that kind of feedback helps us to think about our programs in the future and determine ways in which we can encourage them to do that.
And we've got a couple of people here who've worked with a web background as well, and obviously there's been major guidelines that you must comply to in terms of accessibility in that space. I kind of feel like games is catching up still a little bit in that sense. I think we're doing well and we'll be there soon. But does anyone want to sort of talk to the comparison between what's happening in games and web?
I might jump in there. So yeah, I began my career as a web developer, and we were doing pretty badly in accessibility. We weren't doing much, you know, we were putting alt tags on images, and that was about it. But even, you know, at that time, this was pre-2000, we still got like these lovely emails from people saying, thank you so much for putting the alt tags on your images because my son can now read your website. It was obviously a time when images were often used as text because it was the ugly web. When I started sort of coming across into games, I was struck by two things with accessibility. One is that it's so much harder to kind of do, because a website, you're generally trying to either deliver information or facilitate a transaction, whether that's financial or informational, or getting someone's email or whatever. So the major goal of the website is external to the process of its use. Whereas a game is very much the purpose of the game is intrinsic to the purpose of its use, to the instance of its use. You're actually using the game to deliver a specific experience, and so that makes the experience of the use so much more important. And everybody's experience of the use of a game is different, and disabilities make that different in sort of more extreme ways. So yeah, in that way it's very much harder trying to deliver the same experience to everybody when everybody's so different. On the other hand, though, I think that as game developers we're uniquely equipped to deal with accessibility issues because everybody is different in terms of their capacity to play games and their ability for different types of games and different types of abilities. Some people are better at strategy, some people are better at twitch speed, and we sort of acknowledge that in difficulty levels and things like that. And so, I think it's really important to see disability within the broader space of ability and capacity, and it's just another thing where we can go, oh, hang on, let's make the game so that these people can play it. And yeah, I get really quite angry. I met Tim Dawson the other night. He's a wonderful, lovely man, but I can't get past the first boss of this whole Android cactus. I love the game. It's like, oh wow, this is cool. I love these characters. They're so cute. And it's fun. And I'm really bad at bullet hell and can't get past that. And this is something I experience when I play a bullet hell game. It's something that a lot of people experience when they play any kind of game. And so I think that's something that we're already, as game developers, dealing with, and we can just kind of extend out to all sort of other groups.
Yeah, I find that thing in particular, the kind of difference in mindset between people working in web and working in games. So there's a lot more people in game development who are kind of in it for the right reasons, People aren't in game development to make megabucks. If they were, they would be like working in a bank instead of working in a game, People are in game development because they're really, really passionate about the experience they've got in mind, being able to be enjoyed by as many people as possible. So accessibility is just a natural fit. And of course, figuring out barriers to people's enjoyment and removing them is just the core part of game developers' skill set. So I think definitely what you're talking about, sorry, no. I'll be quick. Oh. But yes, I think something else Alright, I'll try and be quick. I think another fundamental difference between web and games is that websites are all pretty similar to each other. So basically what you can have in web is like a set bar of this is what an acceptable level of accessibility is. You consider like these things, this class is like a general level. You have like levels of compliance and stuff. In games you can't really have that. So for example, standard requirement for developing a website is avoiding things being on timers. If you're developing a game like Civilization, fine, dead easy. If you're developing a game like Call of Duty, not so much. So that's the thing, like to basically to meet the definition of a game, there has to be some kind of challenge, and that challenge is going to be unavoidably some kind of a barrier to someone. So that kind of acceptable level varies completely from game to game. But that's actually a really nice difference, I think, between web and games, is that it can never really be like a compliance, box ticking, here's 10 things you have to do. It's always about optimization, about figuring out ways to make your game more fun to more people, which gets you better results, I think.
And it gets you thinking about the people, and thinking about your players, and being an advocate for your players, which is something at the University of Sunshine Coast where I used to teach, was something that we kind of get our students on board with right from the beginning. Is the role of a game developer is to be an advocate for your players, and that means being an advocate for all of your players, I think.
Yeah, and so Luke, maybe you could tell us a bit about your recent release, or maybe I'm losing track of time, and what you did to make it as accessible as possible.
Sure. Well, I guess I do approach accessibility as kind of a core design. Like, to me, it's a sign of quality, almost as much about being accessible. And so, if your game is accessible, I feel like you're probably making a better game than someone who hasn't considered that. And I guess one of the early decisions I made was to make it event-based.
Can I just go back a little bit?
Yeah.
Maybe you want to tell people what you
It's called My Ex-Boyfriend the Space Tyrant. It's a gay-themed point-and-click adventure game. It's a couple of years old now, but it's alright. Yeah, so it's deliberately event-based, just because I think, to me, that's kind of, when I think of accessibility, that's almost the core decision, like a timing versus event-based. Like, it's almost a 50-50. It closes off a lot of avenues if you do go time-based, and it wasn't necessary. And so I thought, well, I'll just commit to event-based. And so that was kind of the core thing, making sure the fonts are readable, colour blindness, just following the game accessibility guides is really, it's quite simple. One thing that I think I did pay a lot of attention to is that I think with accessibility in games, you're only as strong as the weakest link. So if you've gone, I'm not doing a timing puzzle because I want to do an event-based game with no timing puzzles, and then of the 16 puzzles, I'll have one timing puzzle. That can be a roadblock, and so it just makes the game is no longer an event-based game. It is actually a time-based game, just in that one section. So I guess that sort of consistency is what you're aiming for with a lot of this stuff. So.
Yeah,
there's an old Atari ST game, point-and-click adventure game called Operation Stealth. You know that one?
No.
Yeah, it's like a kind of James Bond rip-off, LucasArts style point-and-click adventure. It's by Delphine, I think. But yeah, exactly like that. It's standard point-and-click adventure game, and until about 2/3 of the way through the game, just to jazz it up a bit, they introduce a sequence where you have to, like an action racing sequence where you're chasing along on jet skis. And when I was playing this, I was 11 at the time, and my motor skills weren't really up to doing like an action sequence like that, a time-based action sequence. So that was it. That was game over. I'm still bitter and ranting about it 25 years later.
Yeah, because that's an interesting thing as well. Like, when there's obviously some people have long-term, I'm always going to have this accessibility issue, but then you've got fine motor skills in small children. You've got, my eyes are not working as well as they were when I was 20. You've got, I sprained my wrist at work and now I can't play my PC games. So even for people who don't deal with accessibility issues on a day-to-day basis, they're probably going to affect you at some stage. You're not going to be able to, you don't want to not be able to play your favourite game just because you're in a short-term situation or you haven't got that skill to do it, or your abilities have been getting older. I'll say that as probably one of
There's a massive self-interest component for me in accessibility, because
we need to fix this sometime in the next 30 years or so.
Well, because every game developer I know is really looking forward to going to nursing homes that are kitted out with all the best consoles and VR.
Well, there are like
it's our goal.
There are already 3 million elderly people in Australia over 65, and I did look this up in preparation. If you're over 90, there's a 90% chance you'll have a disability. So, disabilities increase with age for a lot of people. And the idea that I could be in my old age and not being able to play the games that I love, like I kind of am saving that kind of like civilization.
You might actually have time to play them then.
Oh, I like your hobby, skydiving and stuff like that. No, that's good. I'll be on Mars. But yeah, so disability, there's an element to it. It's people go through their life. Sometimes they'll have a disability, and so you just work it out.
Can I just steal Giselle's role for a moment? Just to ask if Ian wouldn't mind talking briefly about what disability is, because I found that you sort of phrased it in a really good way in a talk that I heard you do recently about what about disability versus a condition versus an environment, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so basically a lot of people kind of think about disability in terms of like its physical attribute and condition you have, but that's really what people actually have is medical conditions, which is a bit different from disability. You're only really disabled when your condition comes up against some kind of a barrier that causes you difficulty performing a day-to-day task. And there's all kinds of stuff that can encounter barriers, obviously like permanent physical impairment, also stuff like Giselle was mentioning, like spraining your wrist, or even having had a few drinks, or sunlight on your screen, or being cramped up in an awkward corner on the trams. Right, that's a common use case, right?
Games down in the expo.
Yes.
Yeah, so all these different things can come up against barriers, and those barriers that are there, whether it's a flight of steps or like choosing red and green for your team colours in a deathmatch, they're generally put there by another person. So it's actually designers, developers, content producers that are actually causing disability to exist in the first place. So then that's what accessibility is. It's just being aware of what those kind of barriers are. And if you've got that awareness, then you can avoid and remove them and avoid those disabling situations from happening.
I'm kind of totally sidetracked now at the idea of board game accessibility. There's something I've never even considered before. You probably have.
Whole heap of stuff. I actually came here mostly about board gaming stuff.
Yeah, cool. All right. So, does anyone? Is that something that you look into as well, or do you have so much information about video game accessibility that I wonder if there's any more room in your brain?
Yeah, a bit on the fringes. I did look into a bit. There's a really, really good. Have you come across Meeple Like Us?
Yes, they actually
Yes.
do ratings of games based on a whole series of criteria for different accessibility issues. So they'll talk about fine motor skill
I'm
requirements.
just going to slow you down so that I can tell everyone else what we will say.
Yeah, so
Yes, I'm just talking about they have, what was it?
Meeple Like Us.
Okay, so Meeple Like Us actually has a rating system to let you know what kind of accessibility it has, which is great. Sorry, that's a much shorter version.
On a whole bunch of different aspects. So not just colour blindness, which is the common one.
Yes.
They talk about things like fine motor skills and readability of components.
Yeah, cool. So looking at a range of issues, including colour blindness, fine motor skills, and you said one other that I've forgotten. Readability. Thank you kindly.
I think social skills are really interesting in the context of board games as well. It's all about that. It is in many cases a necessary barrier, but in other cases it's like, why can't we make a board game for people who just have anxiety or trouble talking to people, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, there's kind of a lot of crossover in design considerations between physical and digital accessibility in games, but you got unique stuff that is unique, like the face-to-face social stuff, like the actual physical manipulation of objects on the board, that kind of stuff. There was a really, really nice other company as well called 64-ounce Games, who came up with a genius idea. So basically, with like collectible card games, you have like the little plastic sleeves that you store them in to keep in good condition. They came up with the genius idea of getting a braille printer and printing braille onto the sleeves. So traditionally, until that came along, there was maybe like 5 braille accessible board games. There wasn't much of a business case because there's a small number, so you just had the like Monopoly and stuff. But now, for a tiny, tiny cost, you can take any game and non-destructively make it blind accessible. But yeah, 64-ounce games, you want to check them out. It's really nice.
And what areas, I'm just sort of looking at some of my questions for continued conversations, but what areas do you think, and I'm probably mostly looking at video games at the moment, but we really need to lift our game on? Are there areas that we're overlooking at the moment or still have improvement? I know I saw a discussion recently, obviously VR is on the rise, and that's going to add a whole other list of interesting problems to solve. I saw someone asking about if anyone's seen any good subtitles in VR yet, and that kind of thing. So,
well, has anyone seen subtitles in VR?
Yeah. I've seen words, but I don't know how. Yeah.
Well, before we get to VR,
Yeah.
I think an issue I think at the moment is the two main engines, Unreal and Unity. I feel like they're the weak link in accessible games, because I think the operating system, the ecosystem now, is actually pretty solid. Like the text is adjustable, there's text-to-speech engines built in, things like that, and the developers at the end, and it's not just the programmers, it's the artists too, it's become part of the craft, making sure the games are easy to use, but those engines, and it's not the people that make Unity, I'm sure they're as generous as anyone else. It's a case of just rendering text through the graphics card onto a screen. It just becomes pixels on the screen, and that makes it a lot harder for the ecosystem around it to make that accessible. So if it's just text in a web browser, the operating system can just read that out to you, or you can copy and paste it. But when it's baked into the texture on the wall, that means nothing to the computer, to the machines at the moment. So I think that needs to change somehow. Like maybe the messaging system for these engines needs to be sort of standardised a bit, so that when there's text being on the screen, the developers can maybe send hints to the operating system to go, this is what text is on the screen, or things like that. So
It feels like a perfect opportunity for tools to be developed that hopefully we'll see in the next few years. We're all thinking about these things, the developers are all concerned about these things. Push those tools back so that everybody gets access to them automatically seems like the next step.
And it was something that came late to SWF, like the Flash format, and I think it will come. Yeah, but I think we need to, as developers and even as players, give a bit of a nudge to those big engines that are out there, really, which is one of the points.
Definitely. Yeah, it's frustrating to see, because especially that thing with exposing text so that people who are blind can use their text-to-speech software to understand the interfaces. It's so frustrating to see, because basically you get blind gamers who will see a game that's developed outside of an engine that is accessible to them, will then see another game that looks like it's the same mechanic, speak to the developers, say, hey, how about it, can you make this accessible to us? Developers are like, oh my god, blind gamers playing my game, that sounds amazing, cool, yeah, I'll go look into it. Time goes by, blind gamer gets back in touch again, says, what's going on? Developer says, oh, sorry, I looked into it and it's just not, it's not technically, not financially possible. From the blind gamer's point of view, they've seen another similar game, they think the developer is just lying and hates them. When really what's happened is the developer had looked into it, seen that the engine they're using, their Unity, their Unreal, their Cocos, isn't compatible, and they'd have to dump it and develop again from scratch. Hence, they're technically and financially not viable. They just don't want to trouble the game with a technical explanation, which is frustrating because it leads that misunderstanding and that conflict. But if the engines did support this stuff, you would get games that would just work for people who are blind out of the box. Like the good example of that is a game called Hanging with Friends, which was the follow-up to Words with Friends. And that game was completely accessible to people who are blind. Actually, it should explain. So basically, how it works. It's on all mobile phones. Basically, turn the mode on. It changes how gestures work on the phone. So you can drag your finger around the phone, and it will speak out the label of any object that your finger is over. So if you're blind, you can basically use your finger like an eye and see the layout of the screen. And Hanging with Friends worked perfectly with it. The first they knew about that was when CNN ran a news story talking about it. They just happened to label their objects correctly and just worked.
This is a good news story.
I think that's the situation that we should be in. But I'm hopeful. I mean, at the moment, game engines are more of a blocker than an enabler. But I mean, Unreal's now got a colourblind simulator built into it to help developers. Unity is working on a new input system that will include button remapping at an engine level. So if you're not physically able to reach some of the buttons, you can reconfigure the controller how you like. Which is obviously useful for all gamers who don't like the gamers. They design a decision on how the control should be, right, as well. But hopefully those little steps forward, hopefully that will lead on to other things.
Can I ask you a question, Giselle?
Of course you can.
It's about game jams. Game jams are one of the things that I am really excited about in this space at the moment. For those of you who haven't heard the term game jam, it's just basically you get a bunch of people together and you knock out a game over a weekend kind of thing. It's crazy and it's fun. And they tend to be little silly games where you're experimenting with doing something differently. And why it excites me is that I find that you can make games I'm getting to a question eventually, really, is that you can make games that cater to a specific and small target group, and that can be a group with a specific disability. So whereas when we're talking about accessibility, we're normally talking about a game for everyone, and we're going to do accessibility to make it available to you. This is a game for people with this condition or whatever it is. And so I recently participated in the audio-only game jam and made a game where you navigate around a space and it's completely, there's no visuals to the game at all. So I was just wondering if you could talk about Global Game Jam and other game jams and how you're kind of trying to bring into and encourage
Yes, I've
accessibility in those spaces.
been up to my second running Global Game Jam at a global level, which is very terrifying, in case you ever wondered. And we have something at IGDAM that is called diversifiers. So they're like extra challenges in case making a game in 48 hours isn't a big enough challenge. Here are some, game jam on hardcore options. But none of them are all that hardcore, and we always have quite a few accessibility related diversifiers. Make sure it's available for everyone, make it audio only. I usually work with Ian and a few other people, and we come up with hopefully different ones. And this year, I think, because I was reading something you'd written recently on a stat, that I think it was 10,000 that use the accessibility. You wrote the article. I think it was lots, a lot of people. Like we have quite a few, probably about a quarter of the diversifiers. There's usually about 20 odd of them, so you can sort of pick and choose. And some people will choose them at the beginning of the jam, and other times they've made a game and then they'll go, oh look, I did happen to only use 16-bit colour or whatever it is. I think it was over 10,000 games in January were made with using accessibility diversifiers, which is a really good opportunity just to make those things a bit more front of mind for people as well. And there are certainly getting more specific game jams that will be looking at particular things. Prop Gen Game Jam, which is looking completely irrelevant, possibly as accessibility, is looking at doing a procedurally generated game jam is pretty much right now. So everyone in Melbourne's going, oh, we're kind of busy.
But I really love game jams. As a tool for raising awareness, because there's another big misconception about accessibility, as well as it diluting things. Another one is that it's going to be really difficult, really expensive. So actually, if people in the space of a 2-day jam, as well as making a game in the space of 2 days, manage to fit in some nice accessibility stuff, that's a really, really powerful lesson to be able to take back to day-to-day development. But actually, there is a lot of really cool stuff you can do with quite a short amount of time.
Yeah. Another, we're very lucky. I always feel bad for people interstate when I say all these things, because we're really lucky to have Victoria.
We all have.
I know, sorry. But this is going further than that. We just had on Wednesday night the Australian Game Developer Awards, and a few years ago I was coordinating those awards, and we brought in an accessibility award. As far as I'm aware, it's one of the first ones at a National Game Developers Awards. And so we had Tangent won it this year, and maybe perhaps you'd like to sort of go into a bit of why it's accessible and what it is. And I guess the other thing that I'd really like to talk about at this stage is Tin Man Games, who have won and are consistently finalists for accessibility every year, despite having very text-heavy games. So they make game books. So yeah, there's words there. So maybe, do you want to explain a little bit about game books and Tin Man and what they're doing?
Sure. All right, well, we'll start with Tangent first. So Tangent won the Accessibility Award a couple of days ago, and it's really, really nice to see, because I think it's a bit of a trend we're seeing in the industry at the moment, the way things are progressing. So it's basically a puzzle game, but it requires a lot of precise timing. You're kind of rotating things around in a shrinking orbit and have to choose the right point to shoot off. And it's a bit hard to explain. The show game.
Yeah, it's a mobile puzzle game.
Yeah, so they had all kinds of nice stuff in there. So you had control over game speed, control over contrast. You can set it to a different high contrast palette. Everything's all communicated with shapes with no reliance on colours. Apart from anything else, they just did a good job of actually telling people that these features exist, actually writing on the App Store listing. All that
And
kind of stuff.
that is hugely important and really easy to do.
Yeah, right, yeah. How much does that cost? Even like free SEO juice as well, like, but people so often don't do it. And what's the point in going to all that work if people don't know about it, right? But yeah, that was really nice to see. But what was nice to see about it is it had that wide range of different features, and that's something we've seen in other games, like the things I was mentioning, like NHL, like Uncharted, like Rocket League. Games that, a couple of years ago, it was, front page news if a game included a colourblind mode, only in 2014. Whereas now, these games have got, like half a dozen or so different accessibility features stacking up. So that's been nice to see this year. I hope that will continue.
And Lampshade Games are a small team. It's not like they had 50 people and 2 of them could be working on
It's
accessibility.
isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's
Small,
It's a
isn't
gun.
it?
It's not that hard to do.
But yeah, the gamebook stuff, that's really nice what Tin Man have been doing. They've been doing a lot of work which you don't really see anyone else doing across industries in general, which is...
Can I just mention probably one of their well-known games recently, Warlock of Firetop Mountain, anyone who played that game, but just if you don't know who the studio is? Sorry.
So they do all the Steve Jackson Choose Your Own Adventure books.
Totally go and check out Warlock for Firetop Mountain.
Yes, it's on the show floor, go check it out. But yeah, so the games where it's like go to page 100 if you want to hack the orc's head off, those kind of games. But it's all text-based, but they've done a lot of work for accessibility for people reading. Which is people have difficulty reading, which is really common. It's around 14% of adults have difficulty reading. But you never hear about it because there's such a big stigma. You don't rock up down the pub and say, "Oh, hello, I can't read." But they've been doing really nice work on that with configurable text size, the way they kind of chunk text up into nice, non-intimidating amounts, choice of different typefaces as well. Loads of really nice stuff in there.
I've had occasion to talk to the Tin Man Games people several times about accessibility, because from our perspective, as you say, they're doing a great job. It's really interesting talking to them because they're really shy about their accessibility. They understand they've done stuff, but all they can see is all that they haven't done. And for a company who are struggling to make text games, there are so many things that they could be doing better. It could all be voiced, it all seems so overwhelming. So trying to get them to realize that even the small steps that they're able to take make a huge difference.
Yeah, I think that's huge as a developer. I think that one of the reasons that developers don't do any accessibility is that they feel that they can't do well enough. Can't sort of cater to everybody. Obviously, you can give flexibility by providing options. But yeah, I think that often we just go, I can't make this game work for everybody, so I'll just ignore it entirely. And that's obviously the wrong thing to do, but it happens a lot. So yeah, if you find yourself in the position of thinking about accessibility and it just seems too big as a game dev, then I think, as I said, that website, that we should have had a link to that one. I think up there.
Yeah, we're a bit slack on the slides.
Is there something, a quick search that people can, like Google terms?
It's just gameaccessibilityguidelines.com.
Yeah.
Cool. Gameaccessibilityguidelines.com has several levels, so you can just go, I'm just going to focus on this easy reach stuff, and if I can do it, I do it. If I can't, I can't. But at least you're doing something, and anything you do will help somebody. So
yeah, absolutely. Just pick a few basic things to start with, and that's the thing. There's in Webland, one of the leaders in accessibility in the web space is the BBC, and how they've got there is by having a really, really simple commitment. They're actually recognising it's a bit unrealistic just to try and do everything first time. Their commitment is each successive release will be more accessible than the last one, and that's it. As long as you're doing that, then you're going to get to a good place.
Cool, and I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions, I think, with this, because I love and questions and stories. We love hearing your stories. And as we say, we've obviously got gamers with accessibility issues in this room as well as game developers, so it's a chance for you to go, hey, we haven't even thought about this. I don't know, is there anything else that we should discuss before we open it all up?
I do. There's one thing I actually do want to mention that I actually really worry about with accessibility, and it's the new free motion controllers. And started with the Wiimote, and I love them. I love them to bits. Does anyone here have an HTC Vive or even a Wiimote? I mean, that's probably 80% of you. Yeah. Just I think up until recently, a lot of people being left out of games because of just the way we developed it. The software wasn't there. that sort of thing. But now, even though we're getting way better at that, we're now entering a period where you could literally used to be able to play a game with one finger, you know, on a mouse, but now we're almost stepping into this digital world where it is requiring full body motion. And I just kind of go, that is going to leave people behind, some people behind.
Yeah, isn't any technological innovation, any change to the environment going to affect some people well and some people badly?
Yeah, I don't
think this
have
one
a...
is particularly kind of affecting a lot of people badly, do you?
I think it could, actually. I mean, we're definitely going to head to a period where there's going to be a genre of games where regular people can't play them. Like, you know, I mean, StarCraft 2 is my passion in a way, and the skill cap for that is so high, a regular person can't compete. Imagine a game like StarCraft 2 where it's a dance game, where you actually do have to dance. You know, it's not going to be accessible to
Me.
To everyone. It's going to be a leaked computer game sort of thing. And I just kind of go, and it all does come back to that freedom of movement thing, and how we do need an approach to handle that. Like, I can see 10 years from now, we could almost be taking a step backwards. So that's my note of caution. I want it to sound.
I shouldn't have had that water. The voice is doing its best. Now I can't remember what I was going to say. Awesome. Yeah, no, because it is an interesting one. Because then part of you, like, when you first look at VR, you go, okay, so it kind of encapsulates you. So until, you know, I suppose until you've got the controllers and how you're going to operate those. I know one of the sponsors for Global Game Jam this year is Toby. Does eye tracking devices. I don't know if anyone knows about these. I'm going to have great fun tinkering with them next jam and encouraging people where you can do like FPS by staring at the zombies. I tried one at GDC and it just feels amazing. It's like I just look at you for long enough, you disintegrate. Awesome!
Yeah, you're going to love it.
And I could be completely paralysed and I could still disintegrate the zombies. So I'm wondering if that kind of eye tracking device might be something that can integrate with VR, because you sort of feel like it creates an environment where your body's becoming irrelevant. So sort of my first thought is this is going to be more accessible, but then I don't actually do the hardware bits and the
head mounted tracking I think also is good. Head mounted tracking I think also is good for a lot of people, but yeah, as you said, for a lot of people it's also yeah, not great. Sorry.
There's a whole new can of worms coming. Yeah.
So you've got VR headset. There are VR headsets that got eye tracking built into them, and they've got some really nice accessibility potential. They're not really kind of mass market yet, but I'm sure it's something that's going to come. That's the thing. It's just about whether it's eye tracking, whether it's just a choice between. Like, there's quite a few PSVR games which give you a choice between using motion controllers or using a regular controller. You know, and that's what a lot of accessibility is about. It's just giving people a bit of choice. And quite often this stuff is built into games. It was really, really frustrating to see in the Kinect days, because, you know, when people are developing Kinect games, they're not all sat in front of a Kinect. They're sat in front of a PC doing their development with a controller in their hand. So they already have within the game controllers in there, and then it comes to launch the game, they just delete them and leave it Kinect only. You know, that functionality was already in the game. That's frustrating. That's the thing. It's usually not difficult to find some way to map those experiences across. And you might be thinking, you know, that's going to be getting away from my vision, but somebody using a controller is a lot closer to your vision than somebody not playing the game at all.
Yeah, for sure. Right, we've got 15 minutes on it. I think we might open it up to questions. There is a roaming mic, so put your hand up if you'd like that, or else there are also 2 microphones, so you're welcome to line up there, but obviously only if that's convenient for you. So maybe start at the back because they're handy and next to the mic. Excellent.
Hi. So I'm interested in if you guys can explain the difference between designing a game for disability and then developing a game for disability. So what you guys have talked about in the panel today from a development perspective has kind of been reacting to make it accessible, and when it comes to that last final piece of the puzzle, like actually executing it and developing it. But what part does design play from the start in terms of thinking how that game can function from an accessibility point of view?
Yeah, we were just talking about this earlier, and as I said, I used to lecture in games design, and one of the things that I think is really worrying in every textbook that we sort of used was the accessibility was the final step. which is just not the way that you really want to come at it. So yeah, I think that designing for accessibility, it does need to be right in there from the start. And I think it should actually come in at the point where you are considering who is the audience for this game. So, you know, if you say we want this game to be playable for, you know, everyone between the ages of 8 and 10, are you really talking about everyone? Like, you know, is that everyone, or are we going, you know, is it a Wii game and it requires everyone with, you know, full control of their arms? So I think that, yeah, that those game design decisions and audience decisions need to be made in very early on and yeah, considered throughout, and because that will make the development process as well as the design process a whole lot smoother, because tacking things on at the end is never going to work very well, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, do you mind?
Yeah, that's the big difference it makes is in cost. So one of the most common accessibility complaints is about text size. There are actually some good standards for what kind of minimum. If anyone's interested, 28 pixels at 1080p, don't go beneath that. Most people do that. But that's one of the most common complaints, a small text size. If you think, you know, when you're setting out to design your game, you think about it from the start. Deciding to use 28 pixel text costs you nothing. It's just a design decision. Deciding at the end of development, as was done in The Witcher 3, which they actually did to their credit, trying to go back and change all the text in your game, and half of it is baked in as images, is a really, really expensive, difficult endeavour.
There are also, just quickly to follow up last that, there's different types of accessibility, so, you know, people with sight and hearing, but also cognitive. And so I think a big part of design, I think of like cognition issues, so it's stuff like keeping information on screen, and that sort of affects what kind of game you're going to be designing. So you just read up on stuff and consider different approaches and go, if I was in this situation, what would it take for me to be able to get through this part? So, yeah.
And yeah, sound design, I think, particularly important for anyone with any level of vision impairment. You get the Let's Plays of people, you know, with no vision whatsoever, playing fighting games and actually managing to play and kick people's asses, just because the sound design's so good. And yeah, that's something again which I think that, separate to thinking about accessibility at the last minute, sound design and audio is often kind of one of those things that stupidly we as game designers and developers bring in and tack on at the end. And I think that, yeah, just so much of it is just good game design, and then doing things the right way for everything else, and it just kind of helps everybody. But yeah, I think that, yeah, bringing audio in earlier can help with that. It can also be a bit of a problem. Just want to say that your audio designer is going to be passionate about audio, and they're going to want to encode a lot of information in audio, which is great, but it also needs to be in other areas of your game as well. Because yeah, you don't want to shift things that were visual into audio and suddenly make that inaccessible to anybody who has hearing.
Steve there.
Oh, yeah.
Hello over there.
Hello.
Hi. Yep.
I've been incredibly lucky. I'm legally blind in my left eye, and that has never prevented me from playing games. The 3DS came out, I just played it in 3D mode. There hasn't ever been an issue until VR. I have absolutely, and I understand the VR, the possibilities of people is amazing. People who just can't get out there, they can go to places they've never been before. But I just can't see the depth. There is no immersiveness there, and the industry is going crazy for it. It feels like that is where the industry is headed, and frankly, as a gamer, I've been very lucky to not be.
That's really interesting. I don't think we're all going to go all VR. I think it's okay. We're still going to have other games, but that must be very frustrating.
The question is really, is there something in VR that is better than a regular game if you don't have the immersiveness of feeling that you're there?
I mean, there's a lot of things to appreciate from VR, apart from depth perception. I mean, just the simple thing of using your head as a controller. And I think that kind of stuff is really useful for more profound levels of impairment as well. So, for example, blind gamers. So there's a lot of blind gamers who even play stuff like Grand Theft Auto, just through the good sound design. And it's through like trying to listen to the stereo sound as you rotate your character around and trying to match up where it is. You know, if you've actually got head tracked, fully immersive 3D audio, you know, that could be huge. And there's been a few kind of like initial experiments in game jams for like the benefits of audio for, VR for blind gamers. So again, yeah, there's so much potential, but I suppose with VR though, it is nice seeing that even at these early stages, there is a lot of people who are thinking about accessibility. May not feel like it at the moment, but there are a lot of people talking about it, which isn't really something that we saw to that same degree when Kinect came out, when Move came out, when touchscreens came out. So I'm cautiously optimistic about VR.
Thank you. We'll just head back over here because you've been waiting and back here. We'll try and answer quickly to make sure we get through. We've got 7 minutes, maybe 16 seconds.
I can come back a little bit actually to the first question. I've just finished studying, say, university, I was finished studying a module on disability and social inclusion. And for my project, I actually did inclusion in games and design and development. And one principles of universal design and how they could affect games design and development. Would it benefit if the games industry pushed back on universities to actually encourage students to actually study disability and social inclusion as part of their core requirements, so that these thoughts were inherently part of the way games designers and developers thought as their beginning thoughts for the way they learnt in the beginning, rather than something they had to develop as skills later?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, look, it definitely would. From a university perspective, we're always listening to what the industry is wanting. So, yeah, any kind of feedback from industry about anything is going like, oh, yeah, we should do that.
And I think we've been repeatedly saying the earlier you think about these things, the better. You should be thinking about them well before you even start thinking about your design. Yeah, people should have that sort of training. That should be part of their thought process if they're going to design for everybody. They should think about it.
I think that touches a bit on the previous point as well about comparing web with game development, because it's really hard to find a web developer who hasn't heard of accessibility, whereas you do quite often find game developers who haven't heard of it. But at the same time, it's really hard to find a university course on web development that doesn't contain an element of accessibility in it. So.
Cool idea. Head over here.
Hi, I'm a big fan of console role-playing games, and I'm also autistic. And I often have problems in game with communicating with other characters in the game and conveying emotions through the pre-written speech options. Is there any way that can be worked with?
It's interesting. Yeah, because I've heard from other people on the spectrum who actually find that the role-playing games can be better for them. So yeah, obviously it is a spectrum, and there's a whole lot of people who feel differently about the kind of communication options. Now let me think about your question.
So that's you're talking about communicating with other players.
Yeah, like sometimes it's just hard to tell like what the emotion of certain options is, and like I'll click on something and it'll come out it's totally different from what I intended.
I have that too.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about player-to-player communication within MMORPGs, I think that this is somewhere which the VR area might help, because starting to get VR headsets that are looking at some facial tracking stuff as well. When it comes to choosing a written text option and then having it sort of stressed differently or whatever, I really can't think of any way to easily kind of address that.
A graceful fallback situation where next to the text in brackets you could have what is meant to be the emotional output of that, and you could even fall back onto an emoticon for people who aren't particularly literate. The one drawback of that is it can be restrictive on a game developer, because maybe the option isn't just meant to be, oh, this is the angry phrase, this is the flirt phrase. Yeah. Maybe it's meant to be nuanced, but once again that comes down to good game design. Yeah.
It's been an extra prompt. There was actually an interesting example of that from, I think it was Star Ocean, where they did that for, well, not quite localization, but to allow people from different countries speaking different languages to communicate. So it's the MMO, but actually player-to-player communication in MMOs that basically let you build up like a bank of phrases made out of emoticons which worked across language barriers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. So probably the biggest concern whenever I've got in games at the moment as far as accessibility, I do a lot of board game stuff, and I also have a lot of Warcraft familiar and great. And I have increasingly a lot of older players who have issues with memory, issues with vision, issues with fine motor skills. Racing events tend to trigger anxiety a lot when they're working against time stuff and certainly twitchy type game control stuff. I would say of our guild, probably 20% of our players of all ages have some form of disability. We have autistic players, we have colourblind players, I think of at least 2. We have players...
I'm just going to rush you to your question so that we have time for answers.
Yeah,
sorry.
We've got
So
2 minutes.
probably the biggest one we've got is the anxiety and things like endurance, because I've got a couple of players that have extreme pain issues. They just cannot sit at a computer for 2 hours.
Yeah.
They might be in a good session, be able to do 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And a lot of the overhead of just getting into the game and getting caught up, where am I, and getting started, they've already burnt half their sort of spoons allocation of how long they're going to be able to play the session.
Yeah, sure. Like, as we always, sorry, we've got 1 minute and 30 seconds, and I'd really like to get to go. Did you have a question, or you were just...
I'm just kind of interested in how much consideration of some of those ageing issues and also...
Yeah, look,
I would love you to talk to you after this.
Let's catch up and chat. But yeah, like they're all things that we are trying to do, and I'm so sorry to sound rude. And
Something for that question though that everyone should look up is the spoons reference. So that's referring to chronic conditions. It's really, really useful.
Dan.
One's hopefully a quick one. Knowing the gamers, where even if they have a disability, a lot of the time they're amazingly stubborn and they'll find out their own ways to try and overcome that. I was wondering if you had any interesting examples of ways that people have either gamed the game or found their own solution that has then led to the developer implementing better accessibility themselves.
Yeah, I think that's 2 questions.
Your best place for that.
Go, Ian. 2 questions, 40 seconds.
Okay. Interesting stuff, I guess. There's a blind gamer who completed Ocarina of Time, and that was through just sheer brute force of will.
Mindedness. Gotta love that.
Yeah, trial and error. It took him I think 7 years or something to complete it.
And I watched it just the other day. I watched a video of a man whose favourite, I think it was Witcher 3 or something, came out, and it was his favourite game. The day it came out, he chopped off both his thumbs in an accident. It took him, but he was streaming it. He was using a Microsoft Orb to play through it, and there was a lot of sort of bouncing around at the start, but he did it, and it was really, people can do it. It's amazing, yeah.
Wow, that thing happened scary when we hit our time. It's
Yeah.
red
I've got big red
outside.
flashing lights saying we have to be quiet and leave now. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming along.
Can we squeeze in one more?
What? I don't know, they might yell at me.
Sure.
Yeah, look, we will hang around out the back here for a bit if you want to catch up and have a chat.
Please. Yeah.
Really appreciate this many people caring about this issue, and we look forward to making more developments in it. Cheers.